Miss Karen Mama Bear is the guest. She is the
off-camera.
Yeah, the off-camera guest.
Yeah.
So.
The studio audience.
Yes, we have a studio audience now. That's how popular we're becoming. Yeah.
Hopefully, she claps instead of boos and throws tomatoes.
Yeah.
But with all that said, welcome back to another episode of For the Record. We'll formally introduce it. We're going to have to really get into that, actually doing this. My name's Matt Rebel, Communications Director.
Deanna Killen, Chief of Staff.
And Senator Brian Pettyjohn.
This is the first full week back after a little mini bomb bill break.
Very long day today.
Yeah, it was.
It was. So
now, why was that?
Well, normally we do this recording on Thursdays after we're done for the week. We're actually doing it today, which is Wednesday. Wednesday is committee day.
Yes.
And so we had a whole slate of committees today. A lot of bills in there, some controversial bills in a few of the committees. So it's just been a kind of a mentally taxing day.
It's been a long day. It's late.
Yeah. And we don't go until 4 o'clock. So now it's like 5:30.
Yeah.
And, after just a lot going on today.
Blake, did you order dinner?
No.
Okay. All right.
No.
Okay. Anyway, what do we got, Deanna? I know you got some stuff.
So much. Did you want to start maybe with the end-of-life options bill, HB 140? Because I know you sat in on that committee today.
So HB 140, which is the end-of-life physician-assisted suicide, however you want to frame it, bill, it made it out of the committee today. A lot of testimony on that bill. It's a bill where you get a lot of emotion on both sides of that issue, and we had individuals who may be facing that choice come and testify in favor. You had a lot of people that were opposed to it, and not just for the what you would think of like the religious reasons for it. You had a lot of people that had
like the disability
community, and some of the stories that I've heard in talking to them directly are very powerful.
Yes.
They are afraid, and I think rightfully so, that this bill will try to lead to individuals with disabilities getting pushed into that direction of taking the pill and ending their lives. So there's a lot of concern about that. There's a lot of concern that you're going to have insurance companies that try to have terminal individuals kind of push them toward this as a cost-saving measure.
I can see that happening.
And look, there have been many cases where doctors have told individuals you have, weeks to live, and they go on living for years after.
Right.
Medical science is not a perfect science.
It's evolving and always improving.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of concern about it. Heard today that the bill is going to be on the agenda next Thursday, the day before we go off on our Easter break. So, it will be on the agenda. It's going to be a long day next Thursday.
Yeah.
Now, I know you said that it made its way out of committee. Was there a roll call vote on that?
No roll call. Well, there was a roll call. Yes. Interesting. So normally in the Senate, you don't kind of do a roll call and vote on release of bills. But Senator Hawker did make a motion to table the bill because of the concerns. I seconded the motion, so it forced a vote. And the motion to table it failed. So
cross party lines.
Cross party lines. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. So that bill moved out of committee. It was reported out of committee, and like I said, Senator Townsend indicated that it's going to be on the agenda next week.
Okay.
Yeah. I know, and just for a little bit of background purposes also, so this bill kind of went through this similar process, same process, I should say, last year. Passed both chambers very narrowly, actually. I think it only passed by one vote.
Yes.
Yep.
In both chambers.
In both chambers.
Governor Carney vetoed it. It's little. I know Governor Meyer noted on the campaign trail that he might be. I think he supports it.
He indicated that in his campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
But so still, obviously, we still got to get through the roll call next Thursday.
Right.
There are 2 new members of the Senate. Not quite sure where they are, but I think one could probably presume, but it is what it is.
And I have a feeling that something about it's going to be mentioned tomorrow. Tomorrow is Governor Meyer's State address.
Yes.
Oh, right.
So I have a feeling something's going to be mentioned about House Bill 140 during that address tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. So what other bills were there today that...
Well, the one that got me very riled up is Senate Bill 78, which I've discussed actually the previous two podcast episodes about this education discrimination bill. It was in committee today. Yeah. It was also voted out of committee. It's just this whole topic just, it really irritates me. But like I said before, it adds a whole list of protected classes to the education. But the only one that bothers me and that I have concerns with is gender identity. When you talk about protected classes like, race and religion, like that doesn't take anything away from anyone else. But when you're talking about gender identity, it affects women. I mean, It just does, whether you like it or not. And that conversation was discussed today. Senator Buxton asked some very good questions in committee. He did ask specifically if this could make it so a biological boy could say, okay, if you don't allow me to play on a girls' sports team or access the girls' locker room, could that be considered discrimination? And they basically said possibly, yes. So this is opening up the door for that. And while I think the rest of the nation is kind of like going in a different direction, Delaware, they are.
Well, we saw that last November in the general election.
We did, but go back. The possibly is what bothers me.
The answer is yes.
It should be. There should be a definitive answer on the record. Yeah. Yes, it does, or no, it does not.
Well, there was a lot. The whole topic of this was very unorganized. They even claimed at one point that gender identity was not defined in code, and it clearly is.
It is. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And someone did eventually bring it up. I think the drafting attorney. She's like, "Oh yeah, it is," and then they read it, and it's just an expression, So where are the guardrails around that? And I think I'm just, as a woman, I'm just so irate that who is looking out for us? It was mostly women who were given public testimony and comment in support of this. And I understand discrimination when you're talking about all the other classes. I get it. But this is kind of what I mean, I think, when it comes to having these tough conversations. No one wants to say, okay, well, yeah, we support all this, but let's have a separate conversation about gender identity because it is different. Right. Nobody wants to have that conversation because everyone has to be politically correct. We don't want to upset anyone. But with stuff like this, you're marginalizing an entire group of people. And it's if people do not start speaking up, I fear what will happen in Delaware.
Now, I know, so as I mentioned, my oldest daughter, she's a junior in high school. She plays soccer, and volleyball too, but she's in athletics, uses the locker room. That's a concern to her. Right. A lot of her friends, we've had people contact us within high school and mothers and stuff, and parents in general, I should say, expressing these concerns as well. But to your point, it's just mind-boggling that no one is wanting to stick up. It's almost like we're casting the worries of female and young girls aside as a society.
Oh yeah, they've created an environment of fear, and it's this very, in my opinion, as a woman, this is how I feel, and I have the right to feel this way. It's almost like this bully mentality that you're going to get on board with this, and don't you dare speak up. And I almost wonder, do a lot of these women and young girls not reach out to the other side because they know the reaction they're going to get? Because they certainly reach out to us. We hear it all the time. So we know that there are a lot of women and young girls who are genuinely concerned about this issue, and it's just being overlooked and just brushed off. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's concerning that people think that they can't speak up for fear of retribution, but that's kind of the world that we live in right now. That freedom of speech is okay as long as you speak the way others want you to speak, and that's unfortunate. That's not the way things should be.
And going back to the nationwide discussion, this is an 80-20 issue.
It is.
Delaware probably isn't, but I still think the majority probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, but I still think the majority feels this way. I just think that people are scared to speak up. I was for how long did I stay silent? And it's just, people have got to start speaking up about this issue, because I cannot imagine that the majority of people think this is right. I just don't see how that's possible.
I wish there was some sort of polling we could conduct.
Oh, sure, we can do that. We should.
I'm sure we should.
We should do
here in
polling.
Delaware.
Yeah, we can do polling.
Right.
on that.
And they always want to frame it, because it was even framed today. Well, don't you care about discrimination? It's like that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about discrimination. We don't want anyone to be discriminated against.
No. But we also want fairness.
Exactly,
as well.
and that's the word I think that we need to really be focused on, is fairness
and
when
security,
it comes to sports.
safety and security.
Exactly, security. Yep. So it's I'm a little calmer now than I was earlier. So it's a good thing. Good thing we waited a little while
really
before.
were wound up.
You came in here earlier, and she's like,
yeah. I was having my own podcast, yelling at everybody. Yeah, it was just me. So I'm calmer now.
Let us know if you need help getting that set up. I can get that recording out there. But.
Yeah. So enough about that. Well, more to come. I'm sure this is going to be on the agenda, because this was very rushed today. It was towards the end of committee. They literally rushed this. They rushed public comment just to get this out of committee. So I expect to see this maybe next week. Maybe next week. So we'll talk more about it then. But I suspect it 100% has the votes to pass. And it was very disheartening to see an advocate stand up, who was responsible for protecting lots of young girls in schools, stand up and support this. And that's the kind of stuff that really aggravates me. Who is looking out for these young girls?
Right.
Who? Somebody has to start speaking up and looking out for them.
Well, that's our job.
Yeah,
yeah, that's our job here.
And I would say Representative Fulofsky, Senator Richardson,
that's true.
right?
That's true.
They have a House bill that's going to be introduced, or has been introduced, I believe, but be making its way into House committee soon. That would make it so boys can't participate in girl sports or utilize their private spaces.
Yeah, and that's just, it's common sense.
You would think.
You would think it's common sense, but I don't know. I have a daughter. Of course, she's out of school now, but I would be livid if there was a biological male that was changing, or that she had to change in front of a biological male in a locker room. That's just that's wrong on so many levels.
But we're being told that we have to accept that. And in some cases, not only do we have to accept it, we have to applaud it. It's it's inclusion. That's not what this is, and I'm tired of it being framed like that. It's not what it is.
Yep.
So enough about that. So how about the pause on the Legislative Hall edition?
Yeah.
That was fun. I sit on the committee, and I found out about it in the news. Nobody told me.
Yeah, I know.
I support, of course. I agree that we should pause it, but...
Yeah. We saw that news release
so nice
after
of them to
it was out.
think of us and include us.
But I think the last time we had a vote on things, you and I voted no.
That is correct.
On moving forward with it. But, now that the public has picked up on it, now that some of the progressive groups have picked up on it, and now that we're in a money crunch, now they're coming to save the day and saying, no, we're not going to move forward with it. So,
and I do agree, it is a smart decision, but just so everyone knows, the headlines were all Democrats pause. Well, we've not really, we definitely voted no on the tunnel. We were like, no, we're not.
The tunnel's
we do
a
not
ridiculous
agree with
idea. It is.
And we had conversations with some of them behind the scenes about, if this is going to be included in the bond bill, we have to have conversations, because a lot of our members aren't going to vote for this.
Right.
So we've been reluctant for quite some time, but again.
Does that include the parking garage as well?
It does not. They already have a lot of money invested in that, so they're moving forward with that.
Okay.
Yeah. And look, for members of the public, if you come up here on a busy session day, parking is bad. Bottom line, it's tough to find a parking spot, and you're because you don't have a assigned parking spot like the legislators.
Yes,
do.
our shadow producer does not.
So it is.
It's over. I come back.
Yes.
It's over.
Ruth Ann and I had to walk halfway from the public archives all the way to the far end of the parking lot to here yesterday, and I felt bad for her.
Yeah.
So the parking garage is not a bad idea. The tunnel connecting is a horrible idea. There are a lot of less expensive things to do, and anything that you look at. I'm not even talking about an overhead bridge. I'm just talking about like a kind of a little bit of an elevated shelf pedestrian area that makes people slow down, as they're going through there. Something like that. It's not going to be millions of dollars. It's probably a couple $100,000 to do something like that, but. I had made it a point to say, look, if they're going to put a tunnel in there, I'm not going to take the tunnel. I'm just going to walk across, every single day, because that's just, there's no reason to be isolated from the public.
I agree.
We're out there to serve.
I agree. I would only use the tunnel if they opened it up to the public and let everyone use it.
If safety.
You don't want to mess up your hair?
No, just.
Yeah, that's always my concern. When it's raining and breaking it outside. So I'd probably use it. for sure. No, but if safety is a concern, I mean, they typically have a Capitol police officer.
Yes, they do.
Right there.
Yeah.
Like, I had to run out to my truck before we started recording this. And
Yeah, Capitol Police, they take really good
Yeah,
care of us
yeah.
here. But when they were talking about safety as being one of the reasons of having a tunnel, I was just like, I would argue that a young girl leaving Taco Bell at 2 a.m. in the morning after her night shift is much more at risk
Yeah, they've never
than
walked Olive
us.
Garden in Dover at night.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Than us walking out to our vehicle after
Right.
session with cops all around us.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't hold weight for me.
No,
Argument
and
doesn't.
Capitol Police recommended it, and they were trying to push for it again for safety, but they're not out there when we're at the grocery store or when we were having a constituent coffee or
Right.
something
You're around
like that.
people all the time in your
Yeah.
community. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Crazy.
So now the building's on hold. Parking garage is still a go. We'll see what happens, but I would think until we get into some more financially stable years and start to get money, coming back in again, we won't hear anything about the legislative all addition for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we also, in the news this week, was the headline about the federal cuts to DHSS here in Delaware,
Yes.
which that was also not a complete accurate picture. The headline was not making it seem.
You tell, Deanna.
Nowhere in there did they mention that these were COVID pandemic funds, which were temporary.
Mm-hmm.
They were
that
going
were set to expire next year anyway.
exactly.
Some of them are set to expire even sooner.
Yeah.
Within the next couple of months anyway.
Oh, geez.
But either way, there was a federal judge, I think, up in Rhode Island that ruled that the administration couldn't pause it, so those funds are coming back here again.
Okay.
But again, all of that
It's still
is pending.
temporary.
Yeah.
Right. It's still temporary. And I think what blew my mind, because I didn't realize this, I don't know if you knew or not, or if you knew, but when they rolled out the press release, they actually admitted that they hired 62 full-time merit employees with this temporary funding.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
It's foolish to do that. And, I mentioned on the radio this morning that, there are some grants that, in the grant language, it says that you have to pay for those individuals for a certain length of time after the grant expires. And I'm thinking of the COPS grant back from the late 90s, early 2000s, where the federal government would pay municipalities for additional police officers with the understanding that they had to keep them on for some X number of years after the grant expired. Okay, you're going into it, you know what to expect. With this, you're creating positions using temporary money.
Merit. They're merit employees. Right. Like, that's the big thing for me. It's like, that's crazy. Like, why would you do that?
Well,
again, it comes back to common sense.
It comes back to common sense and, April Fool's Day, once again.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
What else have we got?
Yeah. I don't know. You got anything, Matt?
No, actually.
Okay.
Put
All right.
me on the spot there.
Well, we were talking about kind of throwing an idea around of doing like a new segment where we kind of talk about like really crazy stuff that happens here. And then I got thinking, well, that would just be the entire episode.
We literally
episode.
just covered
Right.
it.
That would literally, we have something crazier.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we have something crazier. Are you familiar with Senate Bill 10, Senator Townsend's bill?
Refresh me on this.
Okay, let me.
I'm not sure if I should be worried or not.
Well, it's called the Richard Mouse Smith Compassionate Release Act. And what
Okay.
this does, have you heard about it yet?
No, but I
Okay.
know who Mal Smith is.
Okay, well, and he might be a great guy.
He passed away.
Okay, well, he may have been a
Okay.
great guy, right? But this bill allows for early release of level 5 offenders. Level 5, you're talking
Okay.
murderers, sexual
Well,
predators
no,
of children.
yeah, level 5 just means that they are incarcerated in prison. So it could be
Well,
a
when I
range of
when I looked it up,
offenses.
level 5 is like murder, rape, sexual offense involving minors, kidnapping, home invasion. It's your really serious stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you are sentenced to prison, to confinement at SCI
Yes.
or Vaughn or whatever, that's a level 5 facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Either way, this is still not a good idea when you're considering public safety. Now, of course, I think they advertise this as, well, it's only for terminally ill people or sick people, but it's not. It's for people also, individuals who are 60, who have served at least 15 years, who are seeking modification based on rehabilitation, and also for individuals who have served at least 25 years of their level 5 sentence based on rehabilitation. So this is very concerning, I think, when it comes to public safety. And
Didn't we just have a bill last year, Senate Bill 3, that was pretty controversial?
I think that dealt
or
with
did
probation.
that just strictly probation? Parole?
That was probation,
probation,
and parole.
yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right. That was probation and parole. And I think what is really bothersome about this is it removes the Board of Parole sentencing modification altogether, and it's immediately goes to the sentencing court. So that's concerning as well. And it's just, again, it's like I've said before, we are so focused on compassion here, like. Because it's even in the title, compassionate release.
Well, I mean, how can you vote against that?
Exactly. But that's what we do here. We vote on a lot of things because of emotion. Emotion is subjective. It has to do with your beliefs, your personal experiences. Everything we pass in this building should be based on facts. Facts are not subjective.
No.
But we don't do that. I mean, I remember years ago, and I'm not going to say the legislator's name or what bill it was, but I remember we had this huge debate on the floor. And it wasn't a Republican, let me say that.
Okay.
But at the end of the debate, he stood up and he said, just vote with your heart. And I thought, no, that is the absolute last thing you should be doing. You should be taking emotion completely out of this. That's not how we vote in this building. And if it is, that's why we have so many issues in Delaware.
Yeah. In fact, I think somebody brought that up today during the end of life bill.
Okay.
But they were saying, actually the opposite way, that we should release that bill, taking the emotion and our emotional and our religious concerns out of it. But either way, I'm reading the bill right here, and it's just
crazy, right?
It's problematic.
Yeah,
problematic is a good word, but
yes.
this is a good bill for the segment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were going to call it 50 States of Cringe.
Yeah, I didn't know where we were going with that.
Yeah. Is that...
This is a family-oriented podcast.
Well, that's all right. 50 States of Cringe. That's not
No, you're good there.
You're good
yeah.
there.
I think one of the suggestions we were throwing around was a little less family-friendly, but we decided to not go with that one. But again, this would have been our entire podcast if we had done this segment, because everything here is...
Yeah. Yeah, I'll read the bill. So, look it up or make sure you put a link somewhere. This is...
it's crazy town.
This is a crazy bill, Senate Bill 10.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised there are so many sponsors on the bill, to be honest with you.
You could call it 50 Shades of Blue. Get it?
Yeah.
Blue?
Hey, that's good. Maybe that's what we'll call it.
Yeah. Okay.
But what they do is they assign a name to it. It was funny, Matt. It was. For next week we need like a little laugh, one of those little laugh buttons, so we can push that when somebody.
Oh
says
yeah,
something
so we're
funny.
gonna force that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Please no.
where's our studio audience there, Karen? You should be laughing.
There you
Yeah.
go. We got it. There you go. But they have it named after this person, so more than likely what's going to happen, they're going to bring the family in. And it is going to be a very emotional thing. And that, again, that's kind of what we do here. We do everything based on emotion and how it feels at the time, and not sitting down, looking at hard facts and being pragmatic and being like, no, facts don't change. So everything we do should be based on that, and just take the emotion out of it.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to be looking at things objectively.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not subjectively.
Right. Especially when you're talking about public safety.
Yeah.
And an early release with a court. A court has ordered this person to serve, knowing the age that they were when they were sentenced, knowing the age that they would be if they got out.
Yep.
And the court obviously took that into consideration when the sentence was handed down. So.
Right. And I was a criminal justice major, so we would talk about this. A lot of these, hardcore offenders, a lot of them are psychopaths, and they're very manipulative, and they do a very good job of making it seem like they've been rehabilitated, and that's not always the case. While sure, there might be some people who are completely rehabilitated and warrant this, I think it's very dangerous to adopt something like this.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not sure what the support is for it yet, because like I said, I just started reading into it today. So.
Well, we know where you stand on it.
Oh yeah.
So what else? What else do we have? Do we have anything else for the 50 states of crazy, insanity, whatever we're calling it?
Goodness, what else do we have? Well, I don't know if it's that, but one thing I've noticed lately, I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not, this is kind of happening at the national level. You and I were talking about this earlier, and I'm noticing it happening more and more in Delaware. What's up with all the Democrats cursing all the time now, like in their public statements and in their news releases?
What the heck?
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
yeah, that's why you were teeing me off if there's anything else to talk about.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right, because we talked about it earlier.
I don't know.
failed that. I'm sorry.
I just like, what's this about? What's this about?
My dad always said that somebody that curses, I forget what he said, but it's pretty much, look, if you don't really have anything intelligent that you are going to be saying, then you fill it in with a curse word.
Yeah.
And of course,
that's what my parents would always say as well.
Yeah. And, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Maybe they think, the people that are trying to do this think, they're looking tough or edgy or something like that. I don't know, but it's not very becoming of an elected official to do that.
It comes off as more drunken uncle to me, as opposed to edgy. I mean, don't you think?
Drunken uncle?
I think it
maybe.
fits. I think it fits.
Okay.
What are you laughing at?
Nothing.
I don't know. I don't like it.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It's not a good
It's
look.
a trend I'm seeing. It's happening at national level, state level, and even I've heard it here in the building several times recently. I'm like, what is up with that? Like, it's just not professional.
Nationally, it's happened both parties, I'll say.
Yeah. It's not professional.
Here in Delaware, recently it's been one party, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't think we need to spell it out.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so you did ask me last week to get the numbers for physical note numbers for the
Oh, yeah, the fiscal note report, yes.
152nd General Assembly.
So what that is, this is the amount of bills, the price tag on the bills that we passed in the last General Assembly, the last 2 years.
So it'd be 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So do we have a drum roll? We don't have drum roll effects. But
No.
what
We'll
You
get
add
it.
that in,
We'll,
Matt.
we'll
You
get
add
we,
that
there.
in.
we need to add, we got a little pad thing there. So
We'll get there.
what are we looking at here? How much did we add to the state budget by the bills we passed last General Assembly?
So you want a total? And of course, it's kind of, because you have three different types. You have general one-time fund, then you have ongoing funds, and then you have special funds.
Yep.
So I guess if you're looking at all of it for all, because it actually...
So for fiscal year 2025 that we're in right now,
123 million, 943, 218. Well, I guess I should just round up. 124 million.
how about next fiscal year 26
145 million.
and 27?
That's a little less.
Okay.
31 million.
So there was probably a lot of one-timers that were going in.
Well, typically when you do a physical note, it's usually only for 3 years. So I think 2007 probably only had a few bills that
were extended out.
Right, that were extended out.
Now ongoing, general fund ongoing. So how much are we adding to the door openers for next fiscal year? For our current fiscal year, 25.
For 2025, the ongoing is 1,000,007.
$1.7 million or 107 million?
Oh, sorry, 107 million.
107
yes,
million.
107
Okay.
million.
So we've already added $107 million to that budget. So next year it's what, 120,
127,
120, almost 128
Right.
million dollars.
Right, and they're already projecting the income coming in to be significantly less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Revenues are going to be tricky.
Yeah.
So
And I want to note that of all these bills, last General Assembly, there were a total of 93 bills that passed that had physical notes attached.
I'm looking at that breakdown, which is actually pretty staggering.
It
as
is,
well.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, 93 bills, 86 were Democrat bills, totaling 400. Now, this is for all 4 years together, fiscal years together. 403 million, and only 7 Republican bills, 3.6.
Okay.
7 Republican bills have fiscal notes on them.
Yes, correct.
That passed.
We had more bills that passed, but obviously we're
Oh, I
physical.
see.
And they didn't have fiscal notes.
Right.
on them.
These are only fiscal note bills.
Well, still,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, we used to have a senator here that would famously claim we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem
Yes.
here in Delaware. And if you're wondering about that, we can provide you the information. But bottom line is, every year we pass bills that have fiscal notes that increase the budget. So it's not just cost of living, it's not just inflation, it's
Right.
not just adjustments to wages and for state employees. We pass new legislation in Delaware that adds to the price tag of government every single
right,
year.
and it goes on and on. I mean, look how much we added with the mental health bills
Right.
for the schools. That was
Right.
significant.
It was a significant.
Yeah. And that stays because you have to still, keep all of those mental health professionals employed. And
And that's also a cost on the local school districts as
Yes.
well, because it is an 80-20 share or something,
Yep.
somewhere thereabouts. So, when you have the school districts that have to increase their operating revenue,
they
go
us for referendum.
they go to the taxpayers in the district and ask for an increase.
Yep.
Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't,
Yeah.
as we just saw.
Yep.
Yep. So what's the last thing you got right there?
I heard, I don't think this is an actual, I haven't seen it yet, but I was told by a very reliable source within Legislative Hall here that there is a dram shop bill being shopped.
Okay.
Dram shop. What is that?
So what that is basically, some other states have it. It basically, if someone goes to a bar and they drink too much or they get intoxicated, they can hold the business liable, they can hold the bartender liable, which...
Peyton, the bartender.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you better be careful, Peyton. This could directly affect you. But anyway, but the serious part of this is this really could add to the cost of doing business.
It could, absolutely.
I mean, insurance rates are going to go up.
Yeah.
Bartenders were already liable.
If they serve somebody that is obviously intoxicated.
Yeah.
I mean, if they are
This would
sloppy
be
drunk, and they keep serving them, then that's a problem. But
This would be if someone leaves a bar, they're drunk, and I guess they get in an accident. It could go back on the...
yeah, which is, what's the bar going to do? Have to give you a breathalyzer before you walk out the door?
Right. And how do you know someone that doesn't have their own alcohol on them,
Right.
It's just, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this, but I have not seen the bill yet, so I
haven't
don't know
seen
what
it
it looks
either,
like. But we'll be on the lookout for that. This person was...
I mean, you can make the argument, I guess, that if the bartender knew they shouldn't be serving more alcohol, but you're saying that's already a thing?
It's already a thing. Yeah.
Huh.
You have to be
This will pose
certified to
civil...
serve alcohol.
Yeah.
Right.
This will
You have
pose...
to be responsible for cutting people off.
Right.
Yeah. So it says it's going to impose civil liabilities on businesses.
Wow. Well, again, it's another attack on small businesses.
Yeah.
Here
We have a
in
lot
Delaware.
of attacks right now, I feel
Yeah.
like, going on small businesses. And
Small business is the biggest employer. Small business
Yeah.
collectively is the biggest employer in Delaware, and we just keep chipping away at them with mandates, with things like this that
Right.
make it difficult to operate in Delaware.
Yeah.
And, look, if you've got your family's future income and your retirement savings, stuff like that, tied up in a business, you start to see these kinds of things coming down the pike.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to cut your losses. Close your business, cash out, and run
Yep.
somewhere else. So we've got to be really careful when we're doing these things, and look out for the small business owners, and make sure that we're not putting them in danger.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have it with me. I wish I had printed it, but the Housing Task Force, I know they released their report this week. We can talk more about that in our next podcast, but they have a lot of different ideas that they want to run with. So
Yeah, a statewide building code.
Yeah.
Well, and there are a couple bills out there right now that are looking to override local zoning.
yes.
So that mentions statewide zoning for different things.
Yeah.
You've got a bill right now that is for accessory dwelling units.
Yes.
That's looking to override municipal and county building codes. Then you also have a bill that is for marijuana
Yes.
establishments. That's looking to override local, actually in that case, county
Right.
zoning laws and dictate certain areas are allowed to have marijuana facilities, regardless of what neighbors might say.
Right. And because some
regardless of what
towns don't want it.
I don't think it affects the towns. I think this is going to affect the county, the unincorporated areas.
The unincorporated areas.
Yeah.
Okay. So the municipalities would still have a say
Right.
if
right.
they don't want one
But,
in their town. Okay.
but just not the counties now.
Okay.
So
just out where I live. Great.
yeah,
Okay.
out where you live, and there were
Out in the
things.
boonies.
Yeah, if it's an agricultural zoned area, that they can't put a lot of restrictions on them. So, you could have an enclosed greenhouse that's right next to your house.
Yeah.
So it's these types of things where they're taking the decision, and I've said this for years. Back when I was on town council in Georgetown, you don't want somebody in Dover or Wilmington
Right.
making the decision who builds what next to your house in
Right.
Georgetown.
I mean, look how different Wilmington and Sussex, or Newcastle County and Sussex County are. They're so different. It's not, you can't do the same things in those counties.
No, you can't. So, dangerous bill. I mean, it's a dangerous precedent to set. It's the first step toward the state really making zoning decisions for for everywhere in Delaware, and that's something we can't allow to happen.
And if they're worried about affordable housing, maybe they should stop trying to overregulate everything, especially when it comes to manufactured housing. Every year we have how many manufactured housing bills?
Lots.
Yeah, it's like, stop overregulating and
then stop making things more difficult
Yes.
on landlords as well.
Right. Yep, absolutely. I know. My mom rents a couple of houses, and my mom is such a sweet lady. She's like, she charges a certain amount, which is very low, let me tell you, by the standards of rent today. And she tells me, I don't have the heart to charge more than that. So when they start putting restrictions on people, it's people like her who is she's going to be like, I'm not going to do this if this is what I have to do.
Right.
So they actually push affordable housing out of the market when they do stuff like this, but they don't see it. They don't see it.
Yeah, there was a bill last General Assembly that forced anybody who was a landlord to start taking vouchers.
Yes.
And I know a few landlords that said, we're done.
Yeah.
And we warned that on the floor.
Yep.
But it still passed. They went ahead and sold it, and now they're single family homes.
Yeah.
So, those homes are now out of the market.
Yeah. And someone like my parents who are retired and have a couple homes, do you think they want to get into the business of doing all the paperwork that's required to do that?
Right.
So, Senator, you're saying we said something on the floor would happen, then it ended up happening despite being told it wasn't going to happen?
It happens.
Wow.
That happens a lot, actually.
It does.
Amazing.
It does.
Yeah, I think I've heard a few times that.
It's a safe bet. If you want to bet on something, bet on that. It's pretty safe.
Chicken Little, the sky's falling. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
That's not rain.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
What is it?
And,
Again, a family-friendly
family
podcast
friendly
that we are.
Yeah. But, look.
We're edgy and cool without having to
curse.
That's
yeah.
right. Look at that.
Yeah.
Darn right. All right. So, but it's the debates on the floor. A lot of times, and unfortunately, there's a lot of times that I hope that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
We really hope that we're wrong because we are the opposition. We have a different view on a lot of these bills, and a lot of times the majority just passes them through, and we're like, okay, we'll see what happens. Yeah. And we prove to be right.
Yes.
We prove to be wrong sometimes, thankfully, but we prove to be right as well.
No, we don't.
We're always right.
Yes.
We're always right.
Yes, exactly. Get that right, Brian.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Anything else?
I don't have anything else. Do we have anything else from the
gallery, from the studio audience? No.
Just some cheers.
I think we're okay.
All right.
I mean, we gave you a mic now, and then you don't have anything else
It's a very
to add?
fancy microphone.
Do you want to sing us out today?
Yeah. I don't know any Frank Sinatra off the top of my head.
All right.
Don't want that copyright strike.
It's funny. Just a little side note. That microphone right there, Brian DeSabatino, EDIS Construction.
Okay.
He's involved in a lot of fundraisers and stuff like that. Well, he had an event over at Fishon in Lewis, and Senator Lopez called me. He said, "Hey brother, do you have a?"
Did he sing?
No, he didn't sing. No. He asked if I had a speaker and microphone. I was like, yeah, sure. And so I brought that.
Okay.
And Brian, sent me a message. He's like, man, I felt like Frank Sinatra, talking to that microphone.
That is exactly.
Yeah. It's a neat microphone. Yeah. I bought that years ago. It's good for voice.
Okay.
It's a really good vocal.
I do miss that about Senator Lopez, leading all the singing on the floor.
And I was at an event once where he took the stage, took the mic, and did sing. Yes.
We're going to have him as a guest.
That would be great.
Yeah,
yes.
we're going to have to do that.
He's very entertaining.
Didn't Terry Spence on June 30th, former Speaker of the House, he used to be like an Elvis impersonator?
That's what I heard, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, June 30th.
Who?
You.
Me?
Dude, you got the mic?
Yeah. I think we've got a plan. What do you think?
I think I'm going to
catch the studio audience
we can
is very supportive of this idea.
I think
I'm going to. Oh boy.
Yes.
Oh boy.
I'm on board. Peyton, Blake, let's make this
I might have to make a leadership decision to say no to that.
We'll talk to Gerald about that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well.
All right.
I guess tomorrow we'll have the state of the state, and we can maybe talk about that a little bit next week.
Sounds good.
But that's all I've got for today.
All right. We'll see you all next week.
Yep. Thank you for listening and watching.